Hello, guitar players. Let me play you something. Ta-da! Do you like it? That's the first movement of my Fantasia for air guitar. It is. Anyway, I thought today we'd just talk about the guitar. Not about what it does, but what it is. You may not know this, but the guitar goes way, 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 way back as a stringed instrument. There have been guitars and guitar-like instruments as far back as antiquity, but I mean, it wasn't the guitar as we know it today. That didn't develop until around 1820, when it became a six-string instrument with the fret arrangements that we know of today. But even then, it wasn't a concert hall instrument. It was an instrument that was played in parlors, or what they called salons, the smaller venues, never more than 200 people. It wasn't played in concert halls with 4,000 and 5,000 people, or stadiums or whatever. They didn't have concerts like that. And the guitar was not built to be able to be played in those venues because it was too quiet. They just didn't have the volume until a guitarist named Andres Segovia from Spain met up with a guitar builder named Ramirez in Madrid and asked him to build him a guitar that would have the volume so that he could play in those larger auditoriums, just like the violinists and the pianists, and that's where the orchestras would play. And he wanted to play there too. So Ramirez built him that instrument. That, right around 1901, 1905, somewhere in there, that's when the modern guitar, that's what we know of as the modern guitar, was started. That's what everything else is based on, whether it's an electric, a steel string, a nylon string, doesn't matter. That's where it all goes back to. That's when it became a concert instrument. Well, fine and dandy. So what I thought we'd do today is just kind of take a look at what the guitar is from top to bottom. I actually do have one with me. Oh, look at this. Here it is. This is my Yamaha classical cutaway, and what that means is it's got this part that is actually cut away from the frets so that I can get up here and play these frets if I wanted to, and I occasionally do. Well, you don't need to have that, but I like to have it there because I do use those notes. Okay, so what I'm going to do is start from the top and go down to the bottom. This part right here is called the headstock. Now, you'll notice that the headstock also contains the gears and the mechanisms. Now, that not only includes the pegs, but it includes what we call the barrel. Okay, the thing that's the string actually winds around. Okay, well the barrel is set at a 90-degree angle to the pegs. So the pegs come up this way, and then the barrels go across this way. Now, this is one arrangement. I'll get back to this in a second, but I want to show you a steel string acoustic guitar headstock. I happen to have one of those too, and here it is. Now, this guitar has a different kind of a headstock. The posts, or the barrels, go up, out into the air from the headstock, and the pegs go to the side, okay? So this barrel and this peg are still at a 90-degree angle, all right? So keep that in mind, because when we go back and take a look at this one, we say, okay, so why do these pegs go back? Why don't they go out like the other guitar? Well, it's very simple. This is a nylon string guitar. Any classical guitar is going to be using nylon strings instead of steel strings. Nylon strings are just plain fatter. They're bigger around, and especially the top three. Okay, so what happens is they need a larger barrel to go around because they don't wind as tightly around those teeny tiny thin barrels that the steel string can wind around. Consequently, the barrels need to be bigger And then they need something to support it. You'll notice this is attached here and here. This one is attached here and here. They're hollowed out on the inside so that this whole mechanism slides in like this, and the barrels go in there, and that's what holds them down. If they were faced upwards, they would snap off because they're only plastic, and the tension of these strings is so great, it would just break them right off. So they need this extra support. The steel string is wound around a steel barrel, and it doesn't need that because it can hold that tightly wound thin string. Okay, so that's a little bit about the headstock. Now we move down the guitar, and we say, okay, here is the nut. I know what you're saying. Some people would say this is the nut, but this is the nut. Now, why is it called a nut? I did a bit of research on this, and what I came up with was nobody quite knows. There is a conjecture that the nut, the word nut, came from the German word Not. Isn't that great? Not. It's kind of like, remember that movie Das Boot? B-O-O-T? Well, this is Not. M-O-O-N-O-O-T. And what that really means is German for groove or slot. Well, that makes sense. There is a groove or a slot for the string to set in, but you know what? That's probably not true. I have a feeling that this nut, usually you think of a nut and a screw. Well, the screw is going to have a groove in there that will work its way into the nut. Well, this is laced into the nut. So your screw part is actually the string. That's probably not true either. I'm making that up. But you know, why it's called a nut, nobody really knows that. But just understand, that's the nut. Sometimes there is what they call a 0 fret right next to it. That just depends on what kind of guitar you have. You can get that put in, or you don't need it. It doesn't matter. It's supposed to help with the action. I'll get to that in a second. All right, so we have the fingerboard. Now we've already discussed the fact that, okay, this is a fret right here, and this right here is a fret wire, this thin little strip, and they're all the way up the guitar, okay? So the frets are the space in between. The fret wires divide the frets. Now, if you notice, if you take a look up here, you'll see that these frets up here are a lot thinner than the frets down here. The reason for that is that as the notes get higher, the vibration patterns get tighter and smaller. And so they need less physical room to change from this E to that F, then from that E to that F. Okay? It's a smaller sound, a smaller vibration pattern, it's a smaller area. These frets are placed in a very, very mathematical manner. I'm going to sit back so you can see this, because if we go from the nut to what is known as the bridge, that's this white strip down here, the 12th fret, remember we talked about the 12th fret in another lesson, the 12th fret is exactly the same distance from here as it is from here. This 12th fret is the halfway point of the string. The 5th fret is the 1/4 length of the string. Take a ruler to it, take a yardstick to it, and see if I'm not right. The 7th fret is the 1/3 way from splitting of the neck. 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. That's why there is an overtone at the halfway point, at the 1/3 point, and the 1/4 point. Now, oddly, if you go from here, and it's there anyway. Anyway, it's right about here. I can't find it right now. Anyway, but 1/4, 1/3, and 1/2, and the rest of them are on a mathematical progression, which is why every single fret wire is placed a little bit closer until you get up here where they're really, really teeny tiny. Okay, so that's the neck, that's the fingerboard. The neck, of course, is this part. And that can be either very fat, very wide. It just depends on the guitar you pick up. And if you go hunting for a guitar, play a lot of them and make sure that they fit your hand. Okay, because there can be a big difference. If you like the sound of a guitar and you like the looks of it, but your hand can't wrap around the neck, don't buy it. It's as simple as that. You won't be able to play it. Get a guitar that fits you, and then find one just like that that you like the sound of. Okay, so speaking of sound, we come down, and the next thing we come to is the sound hole. Okay? Now, I'm going to skip over the sound hole for just a second to get to the bridge. Again, the bridge, this white strip. This is varies on every guitar that you pick up too, but it's always down here. The bridge saddle is what the bridge sits on. That makes sense. But the strings go over the bridge, and they either get tied off or somehow attached to the bridge saddle, and a lot of variations on that too. But let's go back to the sound hole. There's an idea that when you play a sound, that vibration goes right into the sound hole and somehow magically rolls around the guitar and comes out. But that's not true. That's not true. The sound comes out of the sound hole. Okay? Now you're probably sitting there saying, gee, Tom, where does the sound go into the guitar? Gee, Tom, where's the sound go into the guitar? I knew somebody was saying it. I knew somebody. Anyway, okay. So what happens here is the strings are attached across the bridge to the bridge saddle. The bridge saddle is attached to the top. When you play a chord or a note, the strings vibrate, the bridge vibrates, the bridge saddle vibrates, the entire top vibrates. That gets the air vibrating inside, and whammo, it comes out the sound hole, and that's what creates the sound. Some guitars have the sound hole right in the middle, some have a series of sound holes right up here, some have a moon-shaped sound hole. With an electric guitar, you don't need the sound hole because you have the pickup going into your amp. But it's the same principle. The sound goes into that. Usually, your pickups are down here, guess what? By the bridge. That's on purpose, okay? So that's kind of what happens for this. Now, again, this cutaway is an extra. You get a guitar with a cutaway, and most electric guitars have a cutaway built in. Sometimes they're double cutaway on the top, like the Gibson SG. Sometimes guitars have built-in strap pegs. Now, mine does. This is a strap peg for this, and I had one put in here so that I could just strap into, see how easy this is, strap into my guitar, and then I'm just ready to play. And the strap comes down here, and it's not in my way over here. I like that. A lot of straps are tied to here. If you look at the old folk singers, a lot of them have it tied off just on the other side of the nut. Now, they can do that because that doesn't interrupt the sound. This bunch of little strings here, there's a little area of strings above the nut, do not affect the sound. If I put my hand across this, doesn't make any difference. I can mute that, doesn't make any difference, okay? So that is not affecting the sound. The string is vibrating from here to here, or from wherever I put my fingers to here. So if I put my fingers here, and I play here, there's no sound because I'm muting it out. The string vibrates from the bridge to wherever it stops. Okay? So, the guitar should be kept clean. You don't have to have polish. As a matter of fact, there's a school of thought that says polishing your guitar can be bad for it because you might end up with a polish that has an abrasive in it. It's going to mess up your finish. Well, if you check with a music store guy or a tech and see if there is a polish that you want to use. Otherwise, just use a dry cloth. Okay, very soft dry cloth, an old t-shirt that's clean, or a polishing cloth, and just keep it clean. Now, every once in a while when I'm changing strings, I will clean the fretboard with clarinet oil. I was told that really works well. But when I do that, I have to take all the strings off and let it put the oil on, smear it in, and then let it sit for 24 hours before I put the strings back on. Because if the oils get on the strings, then my strings are ruined. Speaking of strings, there are some people, some players, who change their strings between every gig, every playing date. I have heard that there are guitar players who change their strings between every set. So if they're playing 2 sets or 4 sets a night at a club, for instance, they will do a 45-minute set, take a 15-minute break, and change their strings. That seems a little excessive to me, but hey, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. I change my strings when they start to sound bad or when they get soft or whatever, or they start, or in the case of the lower 3, if they start to unwind, then I change them in a hurry. But from my point of view, you change your strings whenever you want to. Most guitars, you will get a very fresh, sparkling, really nice kind of biting sound when you go to new strings, and you start playing a new strings and you go, wow, that's what I wanted my guitar to sound like, and you realize how shot the other strings are. Okay, so that's a very personal thing, all right, and I don't recommend it one way or the other, but that's a little bit about what in the world your guitar is, okay, and how it works and why it is. So, I hope this helps. It's a little bit long tonight, but that's okay. So anyway, that's about all we've got to say. That was not for air guitar. That was the real thing, okay? Oh dear. Learn about your instrument. Keep playing and have fun with it. Bye.